Good morning, everyone. How are you all doing? I hope you're doing well. I've been looking at something called the Q Consciousness ID. So I've been getting new information coming into my mind, where I was feeling that the current system that we're calling the quantum financial system will not be the possibly not be the final framework of how the future financial system is going to look. And I was feeling like there was something over and above the quantum financial system. And I started to feel that there was a consciousness ID or a Q system above the quantum financial system, which was going to be significant. And so over the past week, I've been looking at the quantum financial system and some of its components. I will make a second video about that. But today I want to focus on something called Q Consciousness ID. So please be supportive of the fact that I'm not able to post political intel on many platforms right now. And so please come and support me at locals.com and or Rumble. And also you can help me by obviously sharing my content with on your own platforms. And in the links below, you'll be able to find other ways to support my work. So I hope you really enjoy the information today. So the first question I asked was, what is the QFS and is it real? They said to me that the QFS is the new financial and trading system, which is currently being devised worldwide, and it will coincide with the worldwide military peace plan. So I asked them, is the QFS the same as the information I've been receiving about the Q financial system? And what is the Q financial system? And they said to me that the Q financial system is the cybersecurity framework that is being built behind the main quantum financial system. So the Q system, or the Q financial system, is being built behind what we understand to be the QFS. And I said, why is it being built in the background? And they said, the financial system currently being developed, which is called the QFS, or the quantum financial system, is just a placeholder. It's a transition framework or structure, which is to move people away from a centralized system of federal central banks to a decentralized system, which will effectively remove the banking system and the middleman as we currently know it. And I said, so are we saying that the system we currently term as the QFS is just a placeholder until the Q system is completed? And they said essentially yes. They said all the platforms currently being developed at this time, which use things like blockchain or cryptocurrency, for example, they will change in the future and or become obsolete. And I said, so what are these systems going to change towards, and why are they going to become obsolete? And they said that they will change towards a more simplistic, user-focused system, removing many middlemen and systems. And I said, so is this what is called a decentralized autonomous organization? And they said, no, the Q financial protocols are very simplistic and they're based on consciousness. So I said to them, can you please explain that to me? They said to me that the Q framework will be a kind of personal ID where the users will use this personal ID to create their transactions. And I said, so how will this personal ID work? And is it currently active or in development? And they said, no, it is not currently available in its highest form. So I said, this Q framework of consciousness ID, you're saying it's not available currently in its highest form. So what form is it in currently? And they said that the Q consciousness level currently available is mostly only in the ideas stage of development, but with more understanding around quantum entanglement and how it correlates to consciousness, then this is a rapidly evolving sector worldwide. And the race is on to crack the unique personal ID code using consciousness. And they said that studies around consciousness will grow exponentially in the coming years, and that the science and philosophy around how thought can create outcomes will develop and continue to expand, and that there will be major breakthroughs in understanding the science of the universe and how the energy or thoughts dictate the outcomes and scenarios. And much technology will be brought forward based on the concepts of consciousness. And they said to me that in the future, for example, a flying car will be able to navigate using your thoughts and your consciousness. So I said, so when is this personal, Q consciousness ID going to be available? And they said to me that it is anticipated that as spiritual consciousness rises, this new ID will be developed and will be unique to every sentient soul. And I said, so based on the current levels of consciousness, like collectively, how far out is this Q sort of financial consciousness system? And they said currently the individuals who will create this tech are in the process of waking up. And they're in the process of waking up to this kind of new vibrational field. So I said, are these people incarnated or are they off planet at this time? And they said both. And I said, when you say off planet, what is your definition of that? And they said that they're not yet born or incarnated yet to Earth. So I said, why are they not incarnated yet? Because I said, we need this tech urgently. And they said that the collective consciousness is not high enough for these souls to incarnate at this time. But they said, however, they are working through certain individuals or souls who vibrate highly and whose path is to bring this information to the collective at this time. Those people who have only the highest integrity and truth to serve. So I said, so they're going to be on a spiritual path, and they said, absolutely. And I said, how many individuals are going to be able to manifest this new Q consciousness ID? And they said to me that at this time, only a limited number of souls would be able to access or understand this information. And I said to them, so in the meantime, are we saying that the more cumbersome QFS system with the blockchain and the cryptos and the gold-backed assets and ledgers, is that what we're going to be using? And they said, on the whole, yes. And I said, on the whole. And they said, some of the current operating systems known as the QFS will not be permitted going forward. And I said, permitted? And they said, yes, some some aspects of the current developments in the QFS, as we currently understand it, they're not going to go forward. And I said, can you tell me which aspects will not go forward? And they said that's currently denied. So I said, so in terms of like redistribution of wealth to the masses, can this occur before this Q consciousness system of finances is launched? And they said, yes, some wealth distribution is already ongoing. So I said to them, what would wealth distribution look like going forwards? And I said, will there be financial rewards, say, from government? And they said all citizens will have a financial reward from government in the future. So everyone would start out their life on a level playing field. There would be no homelessness or food poverty. There would be access to heat and shelter for everyone, and all basic needs would be met financially. And I said that the Q consciousness ID is going to provide this, and they said yes. And I said, will it be a credit score system, this Q consciousness ID? And they said no. So then I said, so people who have openly had their loans forgiven in their credit cards, for example, we've heard people saying, some truthers have been saying that they've had their credit cards and loans forgiven. I said, is that part of this wealth redistribution? And they said no. They said some of those stories have been fabricated to push a narrative. And I said, so have people been paid to say that their debts were forgiven? And they said, not exactly. They said that strategically some debts were forgiven so that this narrative could be verbalized publicly. And I said, what was the purpose of this? And they said to me that this is a multi-layered military plan that has to play many narratives, sometimes divergent narratives at this time, because it is part of awakening the people so that they can start to learn how to discern going forward. And they said it can be a disappointing lesson, but it is necessary. So I said, the new Q financial system, which is based on consciousness, I said, is it overseen by the Delta Force of Space Force? And they said, in some cases, this highly secured, secretive program will be developed by Space Force, but only with individuals who are of the highest, purest vibrations and of Q clearance. And I said, is the Q system just about the new financial system, or does it include all cybersecurity issues related to, say, world peace or other matters? And they said that Q oversees all matters related to the development of consciousness for humanity, whether that be financial or peace programs or energy systems or health systems, etc., etc. And I said, so what is the Space Force connection to the QFS and that development and the development of that at this time? And they said the military only oversee the safety and security of citizens. They are not affiliated to any political party or organization, and that the financial system will be overseen by Space Force only because of their superior cybersecurity focus and this growing area of expertise. But they do not, however, financially or politically have any affiliation with the components or day-to-day operation of the developing system called the quantum financial system. So I then wanted to ask what the Q consciousness ID would be used for. So I said, would it be used for freedom cities? They said yes. Healthcare, they said in some parts yes. Financial, yes, like bank accounts and financial transactions. They also said that those financial rewards from government, it would be used for that. And they said it would be used for travel, mobility, and border control. For e-commerce, they said in some cases. They said it wouldn't necessarily be used for social platforms, social networking platforms, because it wouldn't be necessary. And I said, what about e-government? And they said less so, because government in the future is going to be decentralized and changed. And I said, what about telecommunications, for our own device? And they said, no, it won't be used for that. I said, would it be used to secure data on our telephone? They said, no, but it would be used you would need it to use your telephone, your mobile phone. So you wouldn't need to have the Q Consciousness ID. You would need to have that to actually use your mobile phone. Then I asked the nanotech in air, land, water, and vaccines, will it be used by the Q unique consciousness ID? And they said in some cases, yes, as any nano in the body creates part of a person's vibration and consciousness. So it is all relevant. They said, however, the Q Consciousness ID is not concerned with altering a person's vibration or consciousness with external stimuli, more that it's interested in reading a person's consciousness to operate their unique ID and to give them access to their life services in a harmonious and healing way. They said that people will be able to use their Q Consciousness personal ID, which is unique to them, to access healing technologies like Tesla Healing, Scalar, Rife, through a form of quantum entanglement or quantum manifestation. So a while ago, I was talking about Web 5, Web 7, and I do know that there are other levels of that technology or software, all the way up to something called Web 17. And I wanted to know, what is Web 17? So at the moment, we're on Web 3. And I think that possibly in the background, Web 5, Web 7 is being developed by Space Force. But in the future, I think there are going to be layers of software that will go right up to something called, well, they tell me it's called Web 17. And I said, so what is Web 17? They said to me that Web 17 will be a superior blockchain type technology or infrastructure system, which will work simultaneously with the Q Consciousness ID. And it is currently only at the concept stage on Earth. And I said to them, so do you mean it is developed off planet? And they said, yes, it is already available in other realms of consciousness, and it is waiting to be accessed by high vibrating technicians. It cannot be downloaded until the frequency of the team who will work on this concept is aligned worldwide. And I said, worldwide? And they said, Web 17 will be a collaborative effort as part of the worldwide military peace plan to bring in a consciousness ID. And I said, when we move to this Q Consciousness ID, will we still have physical assets, like, say, coins and notes, for example? And they said, yes, we will still have a physical way to pay for goods and services. But they said, although the Q tech will require that the coins and notes be holographic in most instances. And I said, so will Web 17 be necessary in order to run this Q Consciousness ID? And they said, yes, plus other infrastructures. They called it the metaverse, which will run holographic transfers. And I said, is this tech currently available? And they said, in some instances, it is available in a form of virtual reality. But they said that going forward, it will be more thought or vibration-based consciousness based on this unique consciousness ID. And they said that no headsets will be required. It is expected that technology will be able to read your consciousness directly. And I said, so is this Q Consciousness ID based on something called a quantum resistance algorithm? And they said, no. They said it's based purely on reading vibrational consciousness via quantum entanglement. And I said, will Q Consciousness ID affect how we earn money in terms of, say, our 9-to-5 job? And they said, no. They said that the Q Consciousness ID is only concerned with identifying that the entity is who they say that they are, and that beyond that, an infrastructure similar to blockchain is likely to process the financial transactions. So in terms of the Q phones, I said, how will the Q Consciousness sort of combine with it? So, for example, how will the Q Consciousness work with the phones? And they said the Q Consciousness ID will work with the Q phones because they'll be able to read your consciousness in order to unlock the phone and the apps. And I said, what does the Q actually stand for? And they said, qualified consciousness. And I said, will Q Consciousness ID, will it sync up with, say, MedBed technology to provide us with unique healing programs through, say, quantum entanglement? And they said, yes. And I said, so the QFS, it's like just a stepping stone into this consciousness ID? And they said, yes. They said the QFS system is a kind of financial sting operation to see which decentralized systems will work without corruption. And I said, so it's the QFS currently is like an experiment. And they said, sort of, but really to test, but they said, sort of, but really it's to test how humanity works with a decentralized system and if it can or cannot be hacked, and more importantly, by who. So I said, so the Q Consciousness ID will operate an ID for all aspects of our lives. And they said, essentially, all aspects of our future will operate and function based on our consciousness and the Q unique consciousness ID. And I said, so will technology read our consciousness? And they said, yes. And I said, does it do this already? And they said, no. And I said, is the nanotech in vaccines or air or water or food? I said, is that involved in this Q Consciousness ID in any form? And they said, not exactly. They said, although every aspect of how a person lives their life is reflected in their consciousness. So a person's consciousness will be unique based on what they consume, for example. So I think what they're explaining here is if you've had nanotech in your system through whatever means, it will affect your consciousness, and that the Q consciousness ID will be able to read that. So it will be unique for you, you know, how your vibration is read, how your consciousness is read based on if you've, say, had any nanotech in your system. It will all correlate so that it can be read by the consciousness ID. I said, whilst Q consciousness ID is being developed, will the current QFS system, will it be devised and used with a credit scoring system? And they said, yes, it will be in some cases because it will be necessary. So they said, for example, it will be necessary to assess the behavior or location, for example, of some criminals. I said, the Q consciousness ID, how is it going to work in real terms? They said, it is intended that whatever application or product a person needs to transact with, that the Q consciousness ID will allow that event or transaction to be initiated or opened. So, for example, it could be used for whilst you're using your bank account, making a payment, or even opening a door. And I said, so who or what organization is currently coordinating the frameworks for this Q consciousness ID? And they said, Space Force specialists or specialist teams who are assigned to Q, and it's highly classified. And I said, so will this Q consciousness ID, is it going to replace things like blockchain? And they said, no. I said, Hyperledger or Overledger? And they said, no. I said, digital currency? And they said, yes, in some cases it will. I said, the SWIFT system? They said, yes, it will replace that. And central banks, yes, it will replace that. I said, is the current QFS system effectively a financial sting operation? And they said, yes. And I said, so how are Q intending to measure consciousness to create this unique ID at this time? And they said that was denied. I said, will they use quantum entanglement? They said in some cases, yes. I said, will they use other methods? And again, they said that was denied. I said, will the Q consciousness ID, will it be able to stop AI infiltrating? And they said, it is not really the role of the unique ID to stop the AI, but its reading of a person's consciousness will be able to detect if AI is in any way interfering or altering a person's consciousness. They said Q consciousness ID is purely a key to allow individuals to access certain applications and platforms and to move around freely. So I said, is this how we will operate quantum borders? And they said, in part, yes. And I said, in part. And they said that quantum borders have a unique infrastructure, and that the Q consciousness ID will work with the quantum border infrastructure. And I said, so is the Q consciousness ID part of an overlayer called the Q financial system? And they said yes and no. They said Q is developing different systems and infrastructures which will overlay the current QFS system So, for example, the Q consciousness ID will overlay the current QFS system. And I said, and what would the other layers of this Q financial system be? And they said, one of them is going to be a transportation system. And I said, do you mean like time travel? And they said, yes. And I said, so the Q consciousness ID, I was getting very excited at this point, would that allow you to travel back and forward in time? And they said, not exactly. It would be more that it would allow you to raise your frequency and vibration. So we think of time as going sort of from left to right, past, future, and we're here. But actually time goes this way. It's based on your vibration. So when you vibrate more highly, time goes more quickly. So I'm wondering if that's what they're talking about here, is that the time travel would be more in terms of where your vibration and perception is based in the future. So then I wanted to ask them about Elon Musk's neural network. And, is this going to be part of this new Q consciousness ID, this new setup? So I said to them, is Elon Musk's neural network, is it part of the Q's new setup? This new consciousness ID? And they said no. They said a brain implant or neural implant or device will not be permitted or necessary for Q consciousness. So I said to them, so why is Musk and others developing these neural pathway devices? And they said, as technology evolves, the understanding of healing technologies will be introduced. And technology, they said, in healing is not bad. It's more about who's in control. So I said, how will the neural network help with the development of the Q consciousness personal ID? And they said that the mapping of the brain, which is what this neural network does, it maps the brain. And they said that the mapping of the brain will help in the understanding of how vibrations and quantum information affects the brain under certain conditions, and that the neural networks are a key part in developing understanding of how consciousness and quantum energy work in the brain and its effects. And they said the brain is only one part of the unique ID. So I said, is Neuralink being developed by the Q team as part of the consciousness ID? And they said yes and no. They said Neuralink will not be used in the final consciousness ID, but it is a major factor in developing and understanding how the neural networks affect human consciousness. So research is being gathered from the Neuralink applications, which will be used by the Q team to help them with further development and understanding of consciousness, so that they can further develop a unique ID based on consciousness. So then I said, so will Elon Musk's X.com be part of any developing of the Q consciousness ID? And they said yes. And I said, in what way? And they said, Musk is developing a unique ID currently using neural networks of the brain. And this is not a consciousness ID as such, as consciousness is not found in the brain. Consciousness is the flow of information to the brain through us calling it in based on our thoughts and our emotions. And I said, so are thoughts in the brain? And they said, yes. They said thoughts are the operation platform necessary to compute the input into an action. They said the input is the consciousness, and that the heart and the soul pulls down the consciousness as input into the brain. And so I said, so in a computer analogy, what would the brain represent? And they said the brain in a computer analogy would be the operating system, and the consciousness would be the input. So I hope you've really enjoyed this information today. It's going to be very interesting to see how the Q consciousness ID evolves, and how the Elon Musk research through the neural networks helps them to develop their understanding of consciousness. And I hope you've really enjoyed this today, and I hope to see you next time. Bye for now.